One morning on the island of Sodor, Bertie the Bus was preparing for the day's work when he heard a familiar whistle in the distance.
Oh, that must be James. Wonder how he's getting on. I haven't seen him in a while. He's not usually out this early,
Bertie mused.
Hello, James. What seems to be the matter? You're looking more blue than red today.
James just scowled.
I haven't got the chance to pull passengers in weeks. It's just cars all day long. I'm sick of it. And now, Sir Topham Hatt has asked me to deliver this early morning goods train. It's not fair.
Bertie knew that James could be a bit overdramatic sometimes and decided to have a bit of fun with the red engine.
Well, we can't all be really useful all the time, can we? Now, if you were a bright red bus like me, you'd never have to pull freight cars again, would you?
James rolled his eyes.
Hey, but then again, you weren't always red, were you, James? Ah, yes, I remember the days when you were painted tender to footplate in black. Well, all I can say is, you'd never catch me wearing anything but my smart red paint. Red is the only proper colour, you know. Ah, well, I suppose buses always did look better than trains anyway.
Before James could answer, Bertie drove away, still laughing.
Stupid bus,
James fumed to himself.
Thomas is welcome to him.
One morning, James was horrified to see Bertie surrounded by several pots of red paint.
Look at this, James,
Bertie grinned.
I've been working so hard, I've earned myself a repaint. Don't you wish some of this red paint could go on you too?
James said nothing, but the look on his face said it all. His own red paint was dirty and scratched.
Unfortunately, it's all for me. Don't worry, I'll make sure it looks extra nice.
James left in a huff. Several days of this had passed, and James was growing fed up with Bertie's antics.
I don't know how much more of this I can take, Edward, he complained. That wretched bus is so annoying. He can be a bit of a handful sometimes, but he'll get over the joke eventually, James,
Edward replied kindly.
If only I could get a repaint too. Oh, and a chance to pull the express. That would really show him, wouldn't it?
That would be nice, Edward replied. But don't worry, James. You'll get your comeuppance soon, I'm sure of it. In the meantime, do your best to ignore that. James was unsure, but decided it best to heed Edward's words. Meanwhile, Bertie was feeling the happiest he had been for weeks. Edward had brought a tar tanker to Thomas's branch line earlier that day, and now the bump in Huntingdon Road was finally being mended.
Hey, now this is the life,
Bertie chuckled.
For once, the railway is actually quite useful. Too bad the only red engine on the rails is such a disappointment.
Down the road, some workmen were filling a particularly large hole with tar. They were very alarmed when they saw Bertie heading straight towards them. "Watch out, Bertie!" But Bertie didn't see until it was too late. Luckily, he hadn't been carrying any passengers, but tar had splashed all over him, coating him in black. "You silly bus! We've spent a long time filling that dratted hole." I'm very sorry, sir. Please, can you call the breakdown lorry?" To Bertie's dismay, the workman shook his head. "Afraid we can't do that. You're too deep to simply be towed out." "No, we'll have to lift you out with cranes." "An engine will have to come with the breakdown train. The rails are near enough that it should be able to reach." Bertie wasn't too excited about an engine seeing him like this, but he had no say in the matter as the arrangements were made. When the Fat Controller heard the news, he sent James to put things right at once. James, of course, wasn't happy about an extra job, But when he saw Bertie, he couldn't help but laugh.
Well. What's this, Bertie? I thought you wouldn't dare be seen in anything other than red.
Bertie was horrified to see that James had come to his rescue, but said nothing.
I suppose the painters must have thought red was too good of a colour for you. Oh, well, happens to the best of us.
The cranes carefully lifted Bertie out of the hole and placed him on a flatbed. James took Bertie to be mended, laughing the entire trip. That night, after James had returned Bertie to the bus yard, he sat quietly in his shed. He had a lot to think about, and hoped he would be left in peace. Unfortunately for Bertie, he was not alone.
Well, what's happened here, Bertie?
Asked Bulgy.
What on earth is all over you?
It's Tar. I had an accident today, Bertie replied meekly.
Oh, Tar. Oh dear, Bertie, that's not very good. In fact, you could even say it's Tar-rible.
Oh, Bertie was confused. Huh?
Yes, I suppose you could say you went tarking up the wrong tree.
Bulgy, this isn't funny. My driver could have been seriously injured.
Oh my, if he had been, the railway's reputation would have been tarnished.
Bertie was fed up with Bulgy. His ridiculous puns were making his terrible day even more terrible than before. One morning, Bertie the Bus was idling in the yard. His driver was running a bit behind. Bertie, meanwhile, was still fuming over his accident with the tar. James had been teasing him every time he got the chance, and Bertie was getting fed up. Just then, Thomas passed by.
Beep beep. Hello, Bertie.
Running a bit behind, are we? It's my driver, Bertie called back. He's been late before, but never like this. Bertie waited and waited until finally his driver arrived, though he wasn't alone. There with him was a teacher and her students. Sorry I'm late, he apologised, but I've got a surprise for you that I think will make up for it. He explained that the children's school bus had broken down at Knapford on their way to the Scollery Railway for a field trip. And so we're to take them. It'll be a nice change of pace from our usual route, and the Fat Controller, Sir Thomas, can handle our regular passengers.
Oh, splendid,
chuckled Bertie. Soon the children were seated and he was off. Out on the road, Bertie was speeding along at top speed. He was feeling very excited. Come on now, we're not running a race. Mind the speed limit, why don't you? Warned the driver. But Bertie wasn't listening. As he climbed the hill, his engine roared, and suddenly there was a pop and black smoke poured from the engine. Bertie couldn't see. The driver tried to regain control but swerved off the road and into a ditch next to the railway line. Bertie sat dazed and confused in the mud. Luckily, no one was hurt, but Bertie was stuck. A few minutes later, the driver flagged down James, who was coming along with the local. Bertie sighed when he saw the red engine.
Well, who's left the giant red bread loaf in the ditch?
Snickered James. Thankfully, James's driver was more polite.
Is everything all right?
We're fine, replied Bertie's driver, and he explained what had happened. But we can't just leave the children here in the ditch. Could you take them, please? Certainly.
Me? Squeeze noisy children in with my paying passengers?
Yes, you, replied the driver. And you'll do it without fuss.
You know, Bertie,
James said suddenly,
A little blindness wouldn't stop us engines. The funny thing about rails is, as long as the signalman points me in the right direction, I can make the whole journey with my eyes shut.
Bertie was very upset indeed. He tried to interrupt, but James continued loudly.
But if you're going to drive blind, stay off the road. Anyway, I'm late enough as it is. It's a real pity you weren't up to the job. Oh dear, there's the tar, and now this. You haven't been a very useful bus lately, have you, Bertie?
And James chortled away with the children as Butch arrived to rescue Bertie. Out on the main line, James sped along, making express time.
Oh, silly bus, clever me!
In no time at all, James arrived at the workstation. He left the children with Rheneas and continued on his way. Later, he arrived back in the yard.
You know, Thomas, I'm an important engine. As regular as clockwork I am. You should tell your friend Bertie to keep out of my way.
What are you going on about? Asked Thomas. He was busy shunting and wasn't in any mood to listen to James.
What I mean to say is, I'm a proper engine, and I have a schedule to keep.
And told Thomas about Bertie's accident.
Oh dear, I hope Bertie's alright. Anyway, it's not as if we've never had to clean up after you before, you know. Disturbed cows, busted tar tankers, broken brake valves, the list goes on.
James had had enough.
Anyway, he huffed, just tell that bus to open his eyes for once. He's a danger to the road going around blind like that.
And James fumed away. Later, he found the Fat Controller waiting for him. Ah, James, I need you to return to Crowlan's Gate and pick up the school children. The garage said Bertie will be repaired soon, but not soon enough, I'm afraid.
But sir, can't Thomas or Percy do it? I've done enough work today as it is.
Engines on my railway will do as they are told. I won't tolerate laziness.
Yes, sir,
moped James. As he travelled along, he found the bright sunny day was becoming dark. The sun was gone, and in its place was dark overcast skies.
Hurry along!
James fussed as the children waited on the platform. As they boarded, the sky opened up. Heavy burst of rain fell as James started off. James didn't mind water, but travelling along in heavy rain was difficult. He could barely see, and the rain stung his face as he went along.
Oh!
He cried and thought of his nice dry shed. You've got it, boy! Not much further, assured the driver. But further down the line, a car had hydroplaned off the rain-soaked road and stuck itself in a ditch. The driver was trying to get himself out, but to no avail. As James and his train blasted through, mud flung all over him.
Yuck!
He exclaimed. The mud and dirt stung his eyes. He couldn't see a thing. His driver and fireman tried looking out of the cab, but the rain stung their eyes as well. As James approached Wellsworth, a signal ahead turned red for Percy, who was leaving with the goods train, but neither James nor his crew could see it. Luckily, the driver, knowing they couldn't see a thing, applied the brakes and prepared to stop the train. A quick-thinking signalman diverted James off the main line and into the yard to avoid Percy, but disaster lay ahead. Luckily, none of the children or their teacher had been hurt, and the driver and fireman only had a few bruises. But James felt miserable. Soon the fat controller arrived on Thomas. He was very cross. I'm not sure exactly what you were thinking today, James, but I'd appreciate my engines watching where they're going and not running blind. You're quite lucky all the children are okay.
Yes, sir. I'm very sorry, sir.
James muttered.
You know, James, picking up after your messes is really getting tiresome. Oh, shut up. It wasn't my fault. Really, it wasn't.
I'd beg to differ, said the fat controller as he boarded Thomas. Soon enough, Bertie, who had just gotten out of the shop, arrived to collect the children.
You know, James, driving blind is never safe. But your rails didn't save you this time, did they? Maybe we both have a lot to learn after all.
And Bertie sped away, leaving James feeling quite ashamed. He had a lot to think about. Every autumn, farmers take their crops and livestock to market for sale during harvest time. This is a big time for business and everything is very crowded and very busy. Trucks, tractors, carts and cattle often take up room on the roads and extra trains are scheduled for the farmers who take their livestock to market by rail. One morning, as Thomas was taking a cattle train to market, he was flagged down by a farmer at a crossing. He had been trying to take his cattle across the line, but they were being quite stubborn and refusing to move. Stuck behind the cows was Bertie the Bus. He was very late and very cross. "Hello, Bertie," whistled Thomas. "Held up a bit, are we?"
Indeed I am, he grumbled. Nothing good comes from this time of year. I'm always late and my passengers don't seem to be capable of comprehending that it's not my fault.
"Oh, I know that feeling," Thomas replied kindly. "If it wasn't for those big engines at the junction, I wouldn't mind a little rest between stations to let the cattle cross. But just like your passengers, they blame me for the delay. James especially. It's just a miserable, miserable time of year," agreed Bertie. Though soon enough the farmer was able to move his cattle and the railway line was clear. Thomas was able to go, but Bertie was still stuck. "Good luck," chortled Thomas, and he puffed away with his cattle trucks.
Good luck or not, I'll be here all day.
After Thomas had delivered the cattle, he arrived at the station by the lake to collect his passengers. He was quite late indeed. James was very upset when he puffed in.
I haven't got the time to wait for you all day. I'm going to be late.
"Your eyes still coated in mud, are they, James?" retorted Thomas as he backed onto Annie and Tar-rible. "It's harvest time and we do this every year. You just refuse to listen to reason."
Well, it's still no excuse.
And James fumed away. "Well," puffed Thomas, "and nothing good at all indeed." And he told Annie and Tar-rible about Bertie. Luckily, Thomas was able to make up for lost time, and he reached the end of the line right on schedule. As he waited for the passengers to disembark, the driver and fireman spoke to a farmer who was waiting on the platform. "You wouldn't believe it," he said. "While I was busy ordering my crop load to the market, some no good thieving scum came in and stole all my expensive power tools right out of my shed. It'll cost hundreds to replace them." "Oh dear, that's just awful," replied the driver, shaking his head. "Have you any clue as to who did it?" "None, I'm afraid. One of my neighbours saw him drive away in a splendid red newer-looking car, but no licence plate. I just hope they catch him before he steals from anyone else." Just then, Bertie finally rolled in. He was quite late and very exhausted. "Took you long enough," laughed Thomas. "Have you heard about the thief?" "I don't much care about a thief right now," replied Bertie. "I've had the most horrid passenger just berate my driver at the last stop for the delay. Driver said that manager isn't happy with us either. It's ever so frustrating. Oh well, at least be on the lookout for anyone suspicious. Bah! What good am I to stopping a thief? Seriously? Well, I was only trying to warn you, muttered Thomas as Bertie sped away in a fuss. Oh, I can't wait for harvest time to be over. Bertie's complaining just as much as Gordon and James. He's not even himself anymore. The next morning, as Bertie rolled in, he was in a different mood. You look glum, Bertie. What's the matter? Asked Thomas. Did your manager decide to replace you with a horse and cart? But Bertie wasn't laughing. There was a reason manager was so cross yesterday. Night before last, someone stole his car. It was brand new too. Thomas's driver, who had heard Bertie from the cab, suddenly became quite interested in the conversation. Excuse me, Bertie, he called. Your manager's car wouldn't happen to be a shining new red one, would it? Indeed it was. Have you seen it? Not me, but the farmer who was burgled yesterday said the thief left his property in a new-looking red car. That must be it. That should make him easier to find. Don't worry, said Thomas. I'm sure the police will find him now. Oh, I hope so, replied Bertie. Manager's mood has gotten even worse. But now that I know about this, I can't really blame him. Oh, that's my guard. Must be off. I'll tell you if I see anything. Thank you, Thomas, called Bertie and sped off down the road. As Bertie was travelling down the road, he was thinking about the thief. I do hope they catch him. I worry he might make off with me next. Don't worry yourself over it, said the driver. I'm sure the police will catch him. Bertie was still worried though. He was so worried, in fact, that he wasn't paying attention. As he rounded a corner, there was a farmer and his cattle making their way down the road. The driver slammed on the brakes, but Bertie couldn't get any traction on the dirt. Luckily, he stopped mere feet from the cows. Unfortunately, though, the driver behind him wasn't as lucky. Luckily, no one was hurt, but Bertie's driver was furious. Oh, just look what you've done! What'd you stop so suddenly for? Shouted the car driver. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you rather I ram the cows? All right, soothed Bertie. It was an accident. No need to fight over it. The bus is late. No need for road rage. Well, I suppose I should walk back to the station and phone the police, suggested Bertie's driver. I don't think we had to do that. It wasn't too bad. No need for that, chuckled a policeman. What happened here? Is everyone all right? Oh, yes, we're all fine, replied Bertie's driver, and told the policeman what had happened. Well, it's quite obvious who's at fault now, isn't it? Well, anyhow, the important thing is that no one was hurt. Exactly, just be glad we're all safe. All right, if I can just check licenses and insurance and everyone, I can write up a quick accident report and we can all be on our way. Certainly. Sure, said the car driver nervously. He went to the car for his ID, but then suddenly jumped in and tried to make a run for it. However, in his haste he tried to turn around, crashing through a fence and sticking his back tyres in the mud. Stop! Stop! Cried the policeman. He ran to the car, pulled the man out and forced him onto the ground. Wait a moment! Exclaimed Bertie's driver. That's my manager's stolen car! And there's the farmer's stolen tools in the back seat! Then, that means I caught the thief! Chuckled Bertie. It may have been completely by accident, but you just did a great service to a lot of people, Bertie. You should feel very proud of yourself, smiled the policeman. The next day, as Thomas was collecting his passengers, Bertie rolled into the station smiling. Oh, well, smiled Thomas. You seem to be in a better mood. I certainly am, replied Bertie, and he told Thomas all about what happened. And to think, I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for those pesky cows on the road. I guess you think differently about cows now? Chortled Thomas as he started out of the station.
Bertie said nothing. He just smiled as he basked in the warm autumn sun.